Okay. Everybody a minute to filter in. All right, welcome everyone as you're joining. I'm just watching the people come in, and I won't start till you all get in here and are able to hear. All right. Looks like everyone from the waiting room is in. So let's get started. Welcome everyone. We are here today with America Outdoors and the Bureau of Land Management. We're here to continue the conversation on explore implementation. I would love to kick us off with just a giant thank you, a giant bit of gratitude to everyone who is involved in this, and that is a lot of people. Just looking at the screen in front of me, we have decades of people who have worked on this to build and write this law, to get this law pushed through, and now we're in the stage of implementation, and there's such a collaboration and a strong effort to do this work, and we are seeing what we've built turning into something that is working for outfitters and that will work, and it is just so much past work from so many people and so much present push and work. So lots of gratitude, so many thank yous to go around that I'm just going to say thank you to all of you who are a part of this. A couple of notes about America Outdoors before we get into the webinar. Upcoming events next week, actually March 3rd, starting March 3rd, we will be in Washington, D.C. for our annual Camp Washington. This is our fly-in where we bring outfitters and leaders from across the nation to coordinated meetings in Washington, D.C., where we sit down with agencies, members of Congress, staff, and we help advance our priorities and share real-world examples. If you're interested in learning more about this or being a part of this in any way, please reach out to us individually. We do this every year, so we'll continue to ask, but we also may have conversations that there's work to be done outside of just next week's fly-in. Next, we have in April coming up our Managers Academy, April 15th and 16th. This is a 2-day online manager training that is specifically designed for outfitting organizations. It is designed for anyone who's been around for a while to brush up on their skills, and especially for some of those new emerging managers to really learn some trade-specific management skills. Right now, our lineup is started with Leah Corrigan from Recreation Law. We have Cornerstone Safety Group and then Zeb Smith of Zebulon to do 2 days worth of presentations. And that'll grow and we'll have expanded information coming soon. But if you're interested in that, you can register online for now. As we get going in today's webinar, couple of notes to you listening. We are recording this session. This session will be recorded and it will be available probably within 24 hours on YouTube. We have a playlist called Explore, and it has all of these recordings for implementation and learning. You can go to YouTube anytime, to America Outdoors site, and find these videos. And please feel free to share these with friends or coworkers. Secondly, as we go through this, I know some of you have come with questions, and I know you will end up with questions. Please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen to ask those questions, whether they're specific or general. You also have the ability to chat if you want to make comments or say things just in timely. You also should have the ability to raise your hand if you'd like to participate. We are going to try to leave those questions till the end, so feel free at any point in time to type them in. And unless they're super timely, we're going to hold them off and have lots of time for Q&A at the end. But that being said, I am going to turn it over to Erin, our Executive Director, Erin Lieberman, to get us kicked off in today's session.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, folks, for being here. I'm Aaron Lieberman. I'm the Executive Director of America Outdoors. Outdoors. That's what we're called now, Outdoors. Really excited for this conversation, and really appreciative of the folks, Kevin, Josh, David, not least, who have put time into helping us prepare for it, and you, Karen. Uh, so Karen already went through sort of the housekeeping. I will be brief. Little disclaimer that I just feel is necessary to give that this session is informational and is for informational purposes. Um, so it's every operator circumstances are a little bit different, and any final permit decisions will always sit with your local field office or barring that higher guidance. So if you do have site specific or case specific situations or questions, BLM will generally direct you to your administrator to speak with an attorney if it is something more significant. So today is more about broad implementation, timelines, processes, getting more clarity on those things. As Karen mentioned, we've been working closely with BLM leadership, in particular, Kevin and Josh here, on this town hall to help provide some additional clarity uh, as the Raptor system matures, and as elements of the Explore Act start coming online, which they already are on the BLM side. So the goal is to ultimately give you more of a structured, to give you a structured and transparent walkthrough of where things stand, what's coming next, and to address some of the questions that you've sent into us or some of those questions that might arise as you listen to Josh's presentation here. In general, what this town hall looks like. So we'll briefly just make sure that everybody knows who everybody is. You already know Karen and I. And then we'll pass it over to Kevin after some brief introductions, sort of give a top level framing, then go into a presentation by Josh that gives an updated and I think fairly comprehensive overview of where implementation stands and some of the key issues that we flagged in our previous conversations leading up to this. And we'd really, again, as Karen said, ask you to utilize the Q&A as Josh is presenting. So in particular, that we can align some of those questions as they come with their respective categories. Then we'll spend the brunt of the time, hopefully, in that question and answer segment to get us some of the more nitty gritty questions that might not have been covered specifically in the presentation itself. With that, so we have with us Karen, obviously, myself, the inimitable David Brown, who I don't think warrants any introduction, but just briefly was the executive director of America Outdoors for a long time. And I think of personally as the godfather of the Explore Act, at least for Title III's purposes and some of the core provisions that we saw through there. If you don't like something there, don't blame it on David. We also have with us Kevin Oliver, and I'll let you introduce yourself here in a second, Kevin, but Division Chief for Recreation and Visitor Services, and Josh Travers with Special Recreation Permit National Program Lead. And for what it's worth, those are actually fairly straightforward titles for agency titles, but so I appreciate that. With that, we've got a lot to get through. So, Kevin, I'll pass it on to you if you wouldn't mind just sort of framing things up from your perspective and leading us into Josh's presentation.
All right, you bet. So again, Kevin Oliver, BLM headquarters, division chief. I also lead the BLM's Explore Act core team at headquarters, making sure all of our headquarters units understand their responsibilities under Explore Act, and I regularly brief the Department of Interior's Explore Act implementation team. So there's a whole lot of insurance that we are producing and moving in the right direction. I would say, a year ago when Josh and I and our team cracked open the Explore Act, we knew that Title III was a big deal and perhaps certainly for outfitting and guides, the most important piece of Explore Act. And so from the very beginning, our intent has been aggressive deployment of Title III. Following the intent of Explore Act is critical because I think there's a whole lot of intent in Explore Act, about lubricating permits and making sure we're streamlining things as much as possible and eliminating permit requirements where they're seemingly unnecessary. And so Josh will explain how we've been doing that. And we wanted to do it as soon as possible. We wanted to do it with customer service as a primary focus. We wanted to do so in advance of the permitting season, knowing that some permits have different seasons, but trying to get it out as soon as possible. And finally, transparency. And we'll be moving providing additional information that we already have on our website very soon in terms of sharing our interim guidance for everyone's awareness so you can understand the rules of the game and understand and then provide that feedback going forward. So again, the administration's support has been crucial. Since the very beginning, we knew that there was great support, and the Title III supports small businesses and in many cases rural communities, and that you know outfitters and guides provide one-of-a-kind access to public lands. Last Saturday, I was loading up my snowmobiles, and there was an outfitter and guide parked right across the street from me with 10, 15 feet, and they had just come back from a ride, and I heard the customers talking. I didn't visit with them, but I listened, and it was really easy to hear. That was the best time of my life, and and another customer who was interested in their services came up, and they introduced them to the outfitter, and that just kind of is a microcosm of how you provide crucial access to public lands. It doesn't matter that it was federal lands that they were recreating on, but the point is these experiences that you provide were done through that outfitter and guide network. So again, I guess when I was with some of you in December 12th, I think I admitted that there's a couple times of leaders. There's visionary leaders and experts. And so I admitted I was a little bit more visionary on this one, and really a few of the questions needed an expert. So with that, we have the BLM Title III expert, Josh Travers. Take it away, my friend.
Thanks for the introduction, Kevin. That's awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Travers. I serve as the National Lead for BLM Special Recreation Permit Program. I'm located in Grand Junction, Colorado, at BLM's Western Headquarters office. It's not a bad spot to be at, and super glad to be in the Western side of headquarters where I get to directly interact with the field and all of those offices that support all of you. The last time that I met with all of you was back in 2024 at your conference, and at that time I shared that we had awareness of Explore Act, specifically Title III, and knew it was on the horizon, and super excited to be here today where I get to share that we have implemented Title III. So also a great spot to be at. Since we last spoke, I've had the privilege of taking raw law and turning that into something implementable for the Bureau of Land Management. And really excited to be here with all of you today, sharing the information in a presentation that provides an overview of our implementation, and then for further discussion after I present. And so with that, Aaron, would you like me to go ahead and just roll into the presentation?
Absolutely, yes, please do. And thank you for putting the work into this.
I'm just getting it lined up on my end. And so I have a handful of slides that I brought with me to share, and my slideshow is not advancing. There we go. Sorry about that. Hopefully it'll advance moving forward. So just a real quick overview of Title III and its impact to the BLM. So Title III represents the most significant structural modernization of the Special Recreation Permit Program that we've seen in decades. It's not just a policy change, it's a statutory restructuring of how recreation permits are defined, administered, and managed. It applies to more than 5,000 active permits across the Bureau and improves consistency, not just across the BLM offices, but also begins to align much more closely with the Forest Service. And so most importantly, Title III introduces operational flexibilities and streamlined processes designed to better reflect how recreation businesses operate. At its core, Title III is about creating a permitting system that works better for all of you, especially outfitters and guides, but also for land managers and for the public. And so the foundation of Title III is the new permit framework. Historically, permits were largely defined using broad commercial and non-commercial categories, which did not always reflect the operational realities of recreation providers. And so BLM implementation of Title III replaces that structure with 4 defined permit categories and 10 permit types aligned with activity, structure, scale, and frequency. The new permit types provide clear distinctions between different recreation operations, and it ensures requirements align with actual operational scale and impact. So importantly, the framework provides the foundation for the streamlining tools and operational flexibilities that I'll go into, that I'll discuss next. One of the central goals of Title III is to streamline permit administration while maintaining full environmental compliance and resource protection. So historically, even routine or well understood activities often required repetitive administrative review, even when impacts had already been analyzed and authorized. So Title III provides clear direction for the BLM to rely on existing analysis whenever we can, and to expand the use of categorical exclusions for activities with minimal and predictable impacts. So as we implement Title III, our field offices are actively working through this transition and adapting permit administration to align with these statutory improvements. This includes applying existing analysis more effectively, using categorical exclusions where appropriate, and ensuring reviews are scaled to the level of impact. This transition is underway, and these improvements will continue to become more consistent across the program as implementation progresses. Ultimately, this creates a permit system that is more predictable, more efficient, and better aligned with how recreation providers operate. One of the most important streamlining tools introduced under Title III is the nominal effects determination. This is a structured evaluation that allows BLM to determine whether a proposed activity has minimal and predictable impacts on public lands and resources. This applies primarily to organized group activities, events, and certain outfitted uses, particularly those that are small in scale and occur in areas already open to public recreation. For an activity to qualify, a nominal effects criteria must be met, and when that criteria is met, BLM may likely be positioned to streamline the authorization process. And in certain situations, particularly for low impact organized group uses, it may allow the activity to occur without requiring a permit at all when a proposed activity meets the nominal effects criteria and BLM determines that terms and conditions are not required. And I talked about categorical exclusions, and I want to quickly highlight a recent development that will support streamlined permitting, especially for routine or low impact uses. So while Title III itself did not create new categorical exclusions, it strongly emphasized using categorical exclusions whenever they are appropriate to reduce unnecessary analysis. And to support that intent, BLM has recently adopted 5 new recreation-related categorical exclusions and we had one existing. So we have a total of 6 categorical exclusions in our toolbox now that help support this streamlined direction and improving how we're processing our permits. These categorical exclusions cover activities like short-term recreation uses on established sites or trails, reissuing authorizations where changes are not made to the operations, and small acreage permitted uses. So these categorical exclusions won't apply in every circumstance, particularly in places with resource sensitivities or special designations, but they give our field offices more options to streamline common decisions. And most importantly, permit holders should coordinate with local offices for specifics and how offices are utilizing these tools for your various permitted activities. And see, categorical exclusions are just one more tool that will help BLM deliver faster, more predictable permitting for the recreation service community where impacts are clearly minimal. Title III introduced visitor use days as our tracking method, specifically for low impact permits and those recurring long-term activities with allocated use. But BLM has adopted visitor use days as the primary mechanism for tracking all permitted use. So even though the law required that we use it in certain circumstances, BLM is applying the use of visitor use day tracking and management in all of our permitted use. But one important improvement under Title III is where allocated use is being managed and provides the ability for the voluntary surrender of unused visitor use days. If a permit holder cannot use all of their allocated days in a given use period, they may voluntarily surrender those unused days for that use period. So those surrender days may be temporarily reassigned, improving efficiency and allocation management, and potentially allowing other operators to utilize available capacity. So surrendering does not automatically penalize the permit holder. BLM now has a structured direction on how surrendered or unused days are treated during allocation reviews, which I'll go into next. But one point of clarification is that surrendering visitor use days is completely optional for a permit holder to do, and that exchange is done where a service provider requests to BLM to surrender. BLM will notify the applicant how that surrendering is being accepted, and give operators the ability to make a final determination if they want to surrender unused days or not.
I'll just briefly add, I'm not going to interrupt more, much more, I promise, Josh, but I'll just add that AO, and not least with the help of David Brown, has I think, really solid overview of surrendered use credits and use of allocation reviews. And we also, I know, have additional questions that we've talked through about that as well. But if anybody wants to bone up on that topic area, you might check out the AO resources that we have on it.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. So related to visitor use days, BLM will conduct allocation reviews every 5 years for long-term permits. And just for clarity, we've received a lot of questions on whether we were bringing this into our implementation, and we're getting a lot of questions because Explore Act introduced this as a requirement for Forest Service, but gave BLM the option to include 5-year reviews in our implementation, and to maintain as much consistency as possible with the Forest Service, we made the determination to include the 5-year reviews in our implementation. And so these reviews evaluate actual use and operational performance over the 5-year period. And so if performance has been satisfactory, Title III directs the future allocations be set up to 125% of the highest annual use during the review period, but not exceed the original allocation ceiling. And then conversely, if performance has been unsatisfactory, allocations may be reduced to 100% or less of the highest annual use. And so this ensures allocations reflect actual operational use and ensures fair and efficient allocation management across operators. And so between the ability to surrender visitor use days and the 5-year allocations, this system creates a structured, transparent, and highly predictable allocation management framework that benefits both permit holders and resource management.
Josh,
Josh said I would interrupt, but Kevin's got his hand up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Josh, can you address, does this apply to all BLM long-term permits or just those that have a visitor use allocation in the RMP?
Yep, the surrendering of visitor use days is specific to long-term permits with allocated use. So,
gotcha. And then also this 5-year review?
And the 5-year review only applies to the 5-year review is of the allocated use. And so,
right. And so that's a subset of BLM permits. We have a lot of long-term permits that don't have an allocated use, correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yep. Good questions. I want to transition quickly to Raptor. Raptor is our recreation permit tracking online reporting system. In short, it's our electronic permitting system, and serves as the foundation for implementing Title III. Under Explore Act, Raptor is our primary system used to process and manage special recreation permits bureau-wide. And this means that submitting applications and managing permits through Raptor is essential. It's the one tool that will ensure that the consistency that BLM needs to maintain as we implement Title III. And so utilizing Raptor ensures consistency across all BLM offices and for you as a permit holder. So regardless of where you operate, Raptor helps ensure that permit administration is applied uniformly and transparently. Raptor allows applications to be submitted electronically and reduces redundant paperwork and provides visibility into application status and permit records. It gives you the ability in real time to see how your applications are progressing, but it also gives you the ability to see in real time the administration of your permit and have direct communication with your permit administrator. So Raptor supports many of the new flexibilities that Title III introduced, including the ability to elect applicable fee calculation methods, such as determining if your preference is based on a fixed fee calculation method or a percent of adjusted gross receipts method. And you get to, in many of the categories, you get to elect what your preference between the two. And so there's situations where service providers may pay in advance of their operating year. And in those situations, you want to coordinate with your permit administrator prior to your use period to discuss your intended fee calculation method, whether it's that fixed fee or percent of adjusted gross receipts. And the estimations will be based on on your elected preference. And then at the time of post-use reporting, service providers will formally elect their preferred fee calculation method, and that'll be applied based on actual reported use. So, and then if you don't pay in advance on your permit, every time that you go to submit your post-use reporting, whether it's at mid-season or at the end of a season, you will have the ability to elect based on all of your reporting, whether you want to elect a fixed fee or a percent of adjusted gross fee calculation method. And so Raptor also ensures tracking and documentation for you and the BLM. So you have direct access to your complete permit file electronically and in one location. And so Raptor, the most important thing is Raptor is designed to support you, and it improves predictability, transparency, and communication between you and your permit administrators. And we strongly encourage all applicants and permit holders to fully utilize Raptor. It's your guarantee that you will be able to have the most consistent application of Title III permitting. And then Raptor throughout 2026 will continue to evolve. We're developing it and enhancing it to better support implementation of Title III. And while we're doing that, please provide us feedback. As you use Raptor, the system itself gives you some mechanisms to provide feedback to us, but also if you have feedback that you want to share with Karen or Aaron, they have my information and will share that information directly with me. Your feedback is critical to how we continue to improve Raptor, and appreciate anytime someone gives us ideas or concerns or frustrations with the system. We're always looking at how we can better improve that. And then I wanted to go quickly through the liability framework introduced through Title III, which requires BLM still uses a risk-based determination approach for determining the risk of proposed activities. And what this means is the level of insurance required must be commensurate with the operational risk of the activity. And one significant clarification is that low risk activities, those activities that are determined to be low risk, do not require naming the United States of America as additionally insured. And so that's a pretty big change for our permitting practices. And so that determination is made using a standardized matrix where at the local level, authorized officers are provided a list of criteria. They work through that criteria and make a determination of the risk that permit falls in. But the matrix they're using is a required document for all field offices so that we're making the most consistent decisions across the Bureau. And then Title III also formally recognizes your participant waivers, release agreements, or use waivers, any of your exculpatory agreements. Title III requires BLM to fully recognize those, and with that, you should expect permit administrators to be asking for a copy of all of your waivers that you provide to the public, so that we have a copy of that in our permit file. And Title III also requires that the exculpatory agreements must provide all waivers to include release of the United States of America from liability in those waivers. And so two other things that you should expect to hear permitted administrators asking for copies of. And then I wanted to quickly just transition over to the transition into Title III. And so one of the most important things to emphasize is that Title III does not invalidate or disrupt your existing permit. If you currently hold a valid special recreation permit, that permit remains fully valid and enforceable under its existing terms and conditions. So nothing changes, and you may continue operating exactly as authorized. Conversions to the new Title III permit structure will occur over time, and that process will be coordinated by your local field offices. Uh, and generally, conversions will occur naturally as permits are renewed, reissued, or administratively updated. So there's no requirement for immediate conversion. So if you're in an existing authorization, you are not required to do anything at this time. And there's no operational interruption expected as a result of Title III implementation. However, permit holders may request early conversion. So if you want to transition sooner and take advantage of the new permit structure and its flexibilities, it's entirely optional, but you can contact your local office and make that request. Otherwise, the transition period extends through September 30th, 2029. So current authorizations, offices, I'll say it this way, offices are required to convert all existing permits to Title III permits by September 30th, 2029. This allows for a gradual, orderly, and predictable transition across the program. So transitions will happen, or conversions will happen, but if you want it to happen sooner, just contact your local office, make the request. And offices have been asked to develop local prioritization plans for how they're treating all of the requests that they're getting for early conversions. So the key takeaway from the slide: your existing permit remains valid and your operations continue uninterrupted.
Josh, just really briefly on this one, because I think it's an important point. It may be captured also in the questions after your presentation. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way the BLM has interpreted Title III and is rolling this out more to the point is that in order to, so you say to enjoy the benefits of the flexibility of Title III permit provisions, you must convert over to a Title III permit rather than policy just sort of applying those provisions to your existing valid permit, whether or not you renew. So, for example, if you were somebody who wanted to change your fee determination type from what it currently is to one of the other options that is otherwise available, unlike with Forest Service, at least how they're looking at rolling this out, if you were a BLM permittee, you would have to apply and be issued a Title III permit in order to have that opportunity. Is that right? Right.
Well,
So
yeah, and I can't speak for the Forest Service and their implementation, and I've heard that's how they're implementing, and we're having ongoing conversations between the two agencies just to ensure that we're working towards alignment. But it's correct to say that. So the way that Title III is structured is it provides the permitting framework, the permit type categories and types, and then it applies fee calculations that directly aligns with the categories and permit types that it introduces. And so my interpretation is that you can't just introduce the new fee structure under old BLM legacy permit types because they don't align right, where you have to be in a Title III permit for the fee structure to align following the order of the act.
sure,
And so
yeah, and that's totally fair. I just wanted to flag for the folks that either are currently or will be listening to it, because a lot of people have both Forest Service and BLM permits, and it's a pretty key distinction that I know
Right.
has been a source of confusion for those that are looking at implementation on both sides and trying to make sense of it. So I just wanted to make sure it was noted there as a sort of as a bullet at this point in the conversation before going on.
And if I
Yeah.
could
So,
add a real quick, there's a lot of reasons why we require existing permit holders that would like to convert to go into Raptor. And so it's not just the fee calculations. The Raptor system walks you through each step of the Title III process methodically. And we have a lot of paper permits out there, right? And we're moving away from paper permits wherever possible. We really want to, we are required to continue processing them, but we're really discouraging it. We think it's going to be beneficial for everyone, to move into Raptor. And then if I could, I'll take another minute. A lot of you have kids that play video games, and if you're like me, you're 59 years old and you might still play some video games. These video games get updated, right? They get updates and they get better with time. Similarly, Josh has a team of programmers that have been working since May to get us to this point, but they are working as you speak on a prioritized list of Raptor enhancements. So you're going to see perhaps every month or two, you're going to see updates pushed. And so Raptor is going to get better and better because we know it's a little clunky, but it's playable. It's functional, but it's not where we want it to be. And so we're taking input on that. If you have, Raptor feedback, it'd be great if AO summarized those as things move along. But we're working on a list right now, and people are coding it as they speak and putting it into test environment before we do another update.
thanks,
Yeah,
Kevin.
thank you. And please go on, Josh. I just wanted to add that small point. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So almost done with the presentation here. And before I close, I want to discuss implementation engagement and perhaps what you can expect moving forward. And Kevin covered some of this, but BLM developed a comprehensive interim Title III implementation guidance, which was deployed to the field on January 15th, prior to the February 2nd, 2026 launch date of implementing Title III. And this guidance now governs how Title III permits are administered across the Bureau. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be sharing publicly a copy of that guidance, similar to how you see our handbooks out there. We'll have a copy of the guidance provided on the BLM website. So keep watch of the BLM website, and I certainly will share with Aaron and Karen when we post that to our website. But field offices are actively learning and applying this new framework and are developing transition plans to move existing permits into the Title III structure over time. And with any significant statutory modernization, there's a learning curve, not just for all of you, but also for the agency. And so we strongly encourage permit holders to work directly with your local field offices throughout this transition. It's going to occur gradually. I shared our September 30th, 2029 date for converting all permits, but that design was just to ensure operational stability. But during that time, during our transition as offices are learning Title III, I ask that we continue the strong partnership that we have with all of you, and ask for patience during the transition period as offices are learning the new framework and starting to apply this to 5,000 permits across the Bureau. So a big transition for BLM. This was shared previously, but Raptor is fully operational and is transitioned to issuing only Title III permits. And so the only type of permit that it'll issue now is a permit aligned with all of the Title III requirements. And then from a policy standpoint, the interim Title III guidance supersedes the existing special recreation permit handbook where Title III provisions apply. important to know that our recreation permit handbook remains in effect for policy areas not directly addressed by Title III. And BLM is initiating formal rulemaking to fully implement Title III through regulation. So this will ultimately result in updated regulations and a revised handbook policy aligned with the statutory framework. And our goal throughout this process is to implement Title III in a way that is structured, transparent, and supportive of all recreation service providers, and to get to a place where we have one single source document, replacing our existing handbook, so that you have one document to go to understand Title III implementation and the entirety of the special recreation permit program. And in closing, I just want to share that we recognize outfitter and guides play an essential role in providing safe, professional access to public lands and helping so many people connect with these landscapes in meaningful ways. And our goal in implementing Title III is to create a permit system that's fully transparent, more efficient, and better positioned to support responsible stewardship that all of you provide and the continued growth of the recreation economy. We're committed to implementing this framework thoughtfully and collaboratively, and your partnership, your feedback, and engagement are essential to our success in implementation. So we greatly appreciate the important work that you do and the role that you play, and look forward to continuing to work alongside you as we continue to implement Title III. And that's the end of the presentation that I brought today, and I believe we're going to transition into questions.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. That was extremely helpful. I tried to write down a couple additional questions that I thought of as you were going through, but extremely helpful. And my understanding is that this is the first sort of public presentation of all the work that you've put in since the Explorer Act was signed into law. So congratulations on hitting that milestone, and thank you for making us your first presentation. We are going into question and answer section, and the hope was to sort of align these with the structure of the presentation itself. We'll see to what degree we are able to do that. And so we do have a number of questions that have come in. I think there may have been a couple in the chat as well, or in the Q&A as well. But we do have a number of questions that have come in advance that we can pose here. Maybe as a starting point, because I think it was fairly top level. And Kevin, you answered it, but maybe so whether you or Josh, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the question just for the other folks listening in, that Matthew asked, which is, when will all field offices be required to switch over to Raptor? And I think it is sort of addressed, but if one of you wouldn't mind just briefly speaking to that.
You bet. And also wouldn't mind if we could confirm that we're seeing the Q&A answered, but happy to address that. It was a great question. So the BLM headquarters does expect all offices to be functional in Raptor right now. We just did a scrub of our Raptor system. And so I just pushed a communication this morning to a few states that had a few field offices that were either lacking an authorized officer designated or a program administrator. So those are the two key functions in Raptor that the BLM holds in order to process a permit. And so we've given them about a week to solve for those gaps. So hopefully, if you happen to be engaging with the field office that says they're not functional in Raptor, you'll get a different answer. And frankly, if AO pings me with a list of field offices that are wanting to go otherwise, we're really discouraging paper applications for a lot of reasons. One is accountability to Title III. Raptor is specifically designed to walk the field office to comply with it. And we know that things get a little off track when people try to interpret it themselves. That's the whole point of the guidance in the system. And then secondly, electronic records are we have frankly legal requirements to have electronic documents. So even if somebody demands a paper application, just know that you're going to be requiring that field office to hard enter that into Raptor at some point in the future. That functionality is on our to-do list. It's not high up, but you will be asking for an additional burden if you require a paper permit. But it is your legal right.
Great. Thank you. Related, I think on a related note, when I just put a plug in, we've shared it out in newsletters and otherwise, but both in the interest of helping us understand what folks are experiencing as well as the BLM. Maybe we can share it in the chat and put it in the video notes. Karen, AO's implementation tracker, where we've asked outfitters, folks who are engaging with agencies, to flag issues, things like that, so we can more systematically try to identify and work with agency or agency personnel where there are issues or where there are gaps in implementation or confusion about implementation. And I think maybe just to clarify what that question was getting at was functionally like, if I'm Matthew or an outfitter and I would like to convert my existing permit over to a Title III permit, and I go to my field office and I say that I would like to do that, if they are saying that, if they happen to, and I'm not sure if this is the case in that particular instance, but if that field office is like, hey, we're not there yet, we're just gonna have to wait until, sort of the natural sequence when we have that full functionality, what should that outfitter do to get better clarity on what their timeline is and what that process looks like?
Well, offices have been instructed through our guidance that they need to develop prioritization plans, and so the expectation from a permit holder inquiring and how do I get in line to convert my permit to Title III, the response that a service provider should expect to get is where they are in that prioritization plan, and that prioritization plan, it could look different in other offices because we're giving offices, not knowing, every office has a different workload, has different things going on, and so we want to maximize their flexibility, but we've made it a priority that if they are if there's a formal request that comes in from a service provider to change to a Title III permit, that office needs to have a prioritization plan and a response to that recreation service provider for converting to a Title III permit. And if a recreation service provider, to help streamline that process, they can just submit an application for a permit into Raptor, and that initiates the process for obtaining a Title III permit.
Okay. I think that more or less answers that one. I think there's probably still some questions, and this is just from calls I've received. There are probably still some questions in particular cases. These are early days, but I'll continue sharing with you all as folks share with me, and as field offices are starting to roll this out. If there are any particular issues with actual conversion or sort of messaging around conversion, if that'd be helpful. Let's see. I think one of the early sections in your presentation, I'll try to keep it there, or keep it along those lines, was around, so there's the Raptor transition, but use of allocated non-use credits and the 125% formula. I think, Kevin, that you spoke to this at the agency panel in Salt Lake that we did this past December, but one of the questions that's come in a number of times is around what those circumstances might be that would constitute an event or circumstances outside of an operator's control. So like if I had to cancel trips due to fire, smoke, low water, agency closures, government shutdown, whatever it might be, that is, fairly categorically outside of my control. How do I make sure those days aren't counted against me in a use review? Obviously, there's that Raptor process that you spoke to. It looks like that has not been built out yet. So for this coming season, what does that look like for the next season for a BLM permittee? If there's a fire that comes through and they're not able to operate, smoke, whatever the reason might be, if that's not built out as a module within Raptor yet, what is the interim process that that permittee should be aware of and work with their local field district on?
Kevin, I
Yeah,
think
go
that was
for it.
asked to you, but I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's all you.
Yeah. We're not defining the criteria. We're giving the discretion of the authorized officer to make that determination if something is within the control or beyond the control of a recreation service provider. But for things outside of the control, the examples that we provide are fire, disaster, smoke. In most situations, an authorized officer is going to be pretty familiar what's going on in the region and know if there's a closure in the area or extreme hazards that could prevent someone from operating. And so I think it's a pretty obvious decision. But the way Raptor is being developed to support an automated structure for submitting such requests and going through that. But until Raptor is fully developed to support that, offices have been provided a form. So if a recreation service provider contacts a local office, the office is going to pull this form that they have, and this form tracks visitor use days used and unused. And if a recreation service provider is requesting to surrender visitor use days, it's a sharing of this worksheet to submit a request. BLM approves it. We'll give it back to the recreation service provider, detail how they're accepting those surrendered visitor use days. And then once the permit holder determines that they want to go ahead and move forward with surrendering, BLM will accept those surrendered visitor use days. And it's all uploaded into Raptor so that there's electronic tracking of those decisions until Raptor is further improved to support the automation of that.
So go ahead, Kevin.
Well, no, I think let me tag on to your follow-up after you're done with your follow-up.
So in the interim, there's a form that you've put together and shared with local offices that they can use. Is that something that we could share with permittees, with AO members and otherwise in advance so so they know what they're supposed to do rather than reaching out when all these things are going on and they're trying to shift their operations? Or is that something that would be held sort of closely by BLM until the March or April public release date of guidance?
I'll take that one, Josh. Right now, our intent is to make sure, like I said, that the interim guidance, is provided. And then, we'd like to, wait until we have a public-facing formalized manual in the rulemaking to release all the nuts and bolts behind it. And we're going to be banging away on those. I don't think it's really just, deconfliction. I think the interim guidance is it's going to be most useful at this point in time. And but it's possible we can get the forms and checklists and draft letters released, but that would slow down our clearance process quite a bit. So in order to clear the interim guidance for external, we felt we wanted to get the core description of how we are implementing each section and permit out. That's really the best truth that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense. And I think really where my question is going is ultimately both lack of headaches and efficiency for both agency and for permittees, right? So we live in a day and age where there are natural disasters every second Tuesday. And so having some sense of, what are the timelines that are required of me as an outfitter if I'm surrendering for circumstances within my control, like what's the timeline for hearing back about the determination of that proposed surrender? How do I access, how do I go, what is the process for accessing surrendered visitor use days if I'm eligible to access those surrendered visitor use days? Those types of things that are procedural, that especially for folks who don't live in this sort of wonky world, get really confusing really quickly. Just trying to flesh out if there's any additional sort of information that we can be helpful in sharing with permittees to support you guys.
Gotcha.
Kevin, I was going to add one thing. So I think the most important thing to know about surrendering visitor use days is it's in a recreation service providers to give BLM as much notice as possible on their intent to surrender visitor use days. And the reason why I say that is like we don't want to get a request at the 11th hour of their use period that they're wanting to surrender a whole bunch of visitor use days. Um, when those visitor use days could have been surrendered much sooner, because and the reason for that is because when we reassign those, we're reassigning those within that allocation window that surrendering is happening. And so the more advanced notice we get for that surrendering is ideal. And the way that process can be initiated is as soon as a recreation service provider recognizes, yeah, I'm going to have some visitor use days, I need to surrender, they get into Raptor and send the permit administrator an email to initiate the conversation. And Raptor will log that conversation, date, time that information was shared, so that it's giving us that in advance notice, if that makes sense, and if that's helpful to what you're
That
looking for.
does. Yeah, no, that does make sense, and that is helpful. And I don't want to. I have a tendency to go down rabbit holes, and I don't want to spend too much time here. But I did have one additional question that I think David, you asked at the panel as well. So correct me if I misframe it. But in those, like, say we have a natural disaster, right? Whether hurricane or catastrophic wildfire, whatever it might be, something that would categorically sort of shut down outdoor operations in a given district or unit. In such events, has there been any internal conversation about whether outfitters still have to apply for surrendered use for events outside of their control if, say, the entire river is shut down or whatever the case might be, or whether that would be automatically applied? Does that question make sense first?
I'm not tracking. No.
So say you're on the lower Salmon in Idaho, and there's a wildfire that rips through in the prairie, and the entire river is shut down functionally. I mean, you maybe the actual access point isn't closed, but you can't take people out there. So the river has been shut down. Obviously, this is an event outside of an operator's control. In order to receive the credit for that use that you would receive as an operator if you submitted a request to surrender those use days for an event outside of your control, like would you actually have to submit that in those instances where it's just clear that it's been shut down and that there's no opportunity for the outfitter to operate, or would that just be applied automatically? Kevin?
I was going to say, Josh, I think right now we'd like the applicant or the permittee to go into Raptor and go ahead and make that request.
Okay.
Because a lot of it, maybe case specific, perhaps they can make an adjustment and go somewhere else. And so I think the blanket provision would possibly introduce, some error that we would want to introduce. Josh, is that your take on it?
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then I was gonna follow up with we're definitely taking in this feedback, Aaron. So your comment about availability of the forms is noted. The director's office asked us when we go into rulemaking to specifically address refunds, and make sure that the natural disaster component was well covered in our current handbook. We do have language that covers refunds that is still valid in our current handbook, but we're going to make sure we cross-check that and ensure it's emphasized that these beyond the outfitter's control items are taken in the refund angle as well.
Okay. Great. Um,
Oh, there's a question in the chat from Kevin Garden. Do you want me to read it? And then
yes, please go
Josh
ahead.
will take the answer. So, Josh, the question is regarding an outfitter's ability to pick between fee structures. Can an outfitter use different structures for different payments to be made under a permit? For example, if you pay based on revenues for 1 year, but select a daily fee for another permit year.
Yeah, and please share if I'm not answering the question, but the way that it's set up is you determine your fee calculation method at the time of post-use reporting. And so as you submit all of your post-use data, Raptor automatically calculates based on the information that you're providing us for all of the criteria for all of the information that you're building in your post-use report, and it's determining as you build that information, the fee calculations are being built out for the total reported use. And at the end, when you go to submit that, it gives you the ability to elect between do you want to pay the fixed fee calculation method or a calculation method based on percent of adjusted gross receipts. And every time and that calculation, so it's one or the other for the total post use being reported at that time. And then every time that you go to submit post use, you get to elect which method you prefer.
Which I
And so,
think was
Josh,
the question. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, is it true that the permittee then will essentially see all the different fee calculations transparently,
Yep.
and you got to pick the lowest number just to be straight to the
Yeah,
point of it?
that's right. That's correct.
And I think, I mean, let us know, Kevin, if that wasn't getting at what you were asking, but I think, to my understanding, it was, and that essentially year one going into my Title III permit, I look at my post-use report, it calculates this for me in Raptor. I decide I'm going to choose the cheaper one, as Kevin said. I do that. Next year, I decide that I don't want to do the cheaper one for whatever reason, or there's other circumstances. I can change my fee determination method every single time, iteratively year over year under that permit where I submit use and pay my fees.
That's correct. Yep.
Yep.
And Aaron, if you mind, one more
Yeah,
curveball for
absolutely.
Josh. So, Josh, if a certain permit makes an advance payment at the beginning of the permit, and then they get to post use and they want to change from whatever they selected for their prepayment, will it then recalculate and give them a net total due?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
And that's currently functional.
Yes. Yes.
One of the questions that we had in there, and I'll stay in the same area around the fee, I think, for a moment here. One of the questions that actually came up in between where we were talking about this and after the fact is maybe, and an emphasis on maybe for anybody listening, but maybe a point of difference in interpretation between Forest Service BLM. But is it true that the way that you all have looked at uh, the visitor use day approach, so the six, or I suppose soon to be $7 per visitor use day, that that would also apply to guides and not just clients on an outfitted trip, so that you'd be paying $7 per visitor use day for your guides as well as your clients. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And I think we know, I think I have the answer to this question, but just because it has been asked, is there a revenue threshold above which the flat fee option cannot be used, or is it available to all category four priority use permittees regardless of revenue threshold?
Yeah. So for category 4 specifically, there's a $130 minimum annual fee that always applies. So once the fixed fee and the percent of adjusted gross receipts fee exceed $130, then the election goes to whichever one the recreation service provider prefers. But the minimum fee is $130.
But no
And
other constraints on the high end of that, in other words, which I think is clear from my understanding, but just since it has come in, wanted to make sure to ask it.
nope, there's no thresholds. No.
Okay. Has anything else, Karen or Kevin, or anybody else come in around sort of the fee determination method or questions around that since we jumped in there? Okay. David, anything that you can think of that we're missing there that should be asked?
Not there, but in general, we'd appreciate at some point chatting with you about areas of implementation that you think might be problematic. and that might need some future adjustment, if you feel
Okay.
comfortable doing that.
Yeah, Kevin, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, no, we'd be happy to have a call. We've been, like I said, you're on our list, David, to connect with. So we'll put that on the agenda for a huddle. And you're welcome to press for it if you want to meet with us sooner than later. Um,
Yeah. Um, okay. Let's see. This is something that we've talked about, and it's not specific necessarily to Title III, but it is applicable insofar as Raptor will be issuing these Title III permits. And I know that, Kevin, Josh, you've already been working on this. I think you in particular, Kevin. So maybe this question is to you, but if an outfitter receives a permit through Raptor that still references an extant, so that they now invalid or currently invalid executive order, for example, 13658 or 14026, that have either been, or have either had agency direction to be removed from permits or else have been rescinded themselves and are being removed from Department of Labor regulations. What should they do? And sort of related to that, do you have some sense of when any corrections in the Raptor system with what updates might account for those for that vestigial verbiage? There's probably a more straightforward way to ask that, but you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, 100%. I'll probably take it and then pitch Josh a specific question on timing as he's closest to the development team and what their next priorities are. So again, it's absolutely correct, that we see, EO 14026 was rescinded on March 14th of last year. And so our talking points that we're sharing is that the Department of Labor is currently taking steps to formally rescind the 2020 regulation. It takes time to get regulations revised, go into rulemaking and through all that. And so they'll be revising those regulations at 29 CFR Part 23 that implements that EO. And our understanding with the Department of Labor is that they are no longer enforcing that regulation because it's clearly not in effect, just as we are. If anything nullifies our regulations or otherwise calls them into question, and we suspend operations on that. So the permit expressly states that the permittee must comply with 29 CFR 23 in accordance with applicable law. And because the DOL Department of Labor is taking steps to nullify that rule and is not enforcing it, we recognize that it would be better if that language wasn't in there, and we're working to remove it. But at this time, there's no need to comply with those regulations or that EO. So those are our talking points, and we'll get it out of Raptor as soon as we possibly can. Josh, anything on timeline for that?
Yeah, it's likely going to be removed in the next 3 weeks.
Excellent.
We should, and it'll be more general language, just stating that you just need to be in alignment with the law.
But not sooner than 3 weeks, because it takes, we have to get through a tranche of development, put it in the test environment, and then roll it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And huge thank you to both of you on that front. We flagged that in a previous conversation, and it sounds like you guys are all over it. So really appreciate the quick follow up on that. Let's see. I suppose I'll go. I was trying to think of what the next section was with according to your actual presentation, Josh. But I had a question that came up as you were talking about categorical exclusions, and the new categorical exclusions that have been brought over. And part of that question is, there's just recently an article that the White House put out, or I suppose a press release, giving information about the new tool that CEQ is launching, called CE Works, which is, quote, a digital platform designed to help federal agencies speed up certain parts of the NEPA environmental review process, focusing specifically in this case on categorical exclusions Is that something that will be that that the BLM will be using directly, whether through Raptor or otherwise, to process or evaluate the applicability of categorical exclusions? Do you know at this point? I know the press release was just several days ago, so you might not have an answer yet, but
Fair enough. Josh, you want me to take this one? I'm happy to.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Go for
So
it.
unless Josh knows otherwise, I have to go back and confirm with our planning shop about that tool and BLM's specific usage of it. But I can tell you that we've been meeting regularly with the field over the past year. I think it's almost every 2 weeks. Essentially retraining the field's mindset in use of categorical exclusions, making sure they understand all the nuances of the process, and the intent there is that we're going to see field offices get a lot more comfortable in applying those and understanding how to do it in a way that is easily defensible. That their checklist, because it's not just oh, I want to use one. You have to go through a checklist and make sure that there's not a significant issue that needs to be examined. So I could just say we've been making a lot of internal culture changes and communication and answering the technical questions so that people are gravitating towards those wherever appropriate. And we're hoping that's going to be, especially with these new CEs, seen a lot more in the field. But we'll get back to AO on BLM's use of that newly announced tool. Is
that'd
probably
be
my
super helpful.
best
And
take
I
on
have
it.
very little understanding of it at this point, but it seemed like a pretty nifty tool to be able to use. Another
I do have a go
question.
back on
Go ahead.
CEs. Are you still
Yeah,
on
yeah.
CEs?
Yep.
So Josh, when you presented, you mentioned, and this is a question to you because I don't know the answer. And actually, David Brown pointed out, he asked if BLM was contemplating getting rid of the requirement to not use CEs, the disallowance of using CEs on wild and scenic rivers. And that's on our list of things to explore with the administration. But Josh, when you presented, you mentioned that categorical exclusions are not applicable in specially designated places, and that's not always true, right?
No,
It
no.
depends upon the resources and the proposed activity. It's entirely possible that you could be in a national monument or a national conservation area or other special designation. A CE may apply, so I wanted to make sure that it's not a broad brush denial, right?
Yeah, and I tried to emphasize the word may when I presented that.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a key word. So CE categorical exclusions can apply in special designated areas. It just depends on what the proposed activity is, and there's some coordination on the BLM side that has to be done just to ensure that that we're following all of the NEPA requirements. But they can apply in most areas.
David?
Yeah, that I think that's a circumstance or situation where you evaluate extraordinary circumstances, and you have to do that to determine whether it has an impact,
Yeah,
adverse impact, and but you can use a CADX if you decide. I guess you have to have a decision memo or something that decides that the resource is not impacted adversely,
that's
except for
right.
the issue with wild scenic rivers, where it does say in policy that you're prohibited from using them on wild scenic rivers for some reason. And I know policy is not as strict as regulation, but I'm not sure that that has been fully developed or the exceptions have been fully developed for wild scenic rivers.
We'll make sure that's brought to the administration's awareness, and we'll see if that can get racked.
And maybe we could be helpful there as well by submitting some thoughts in advance of y'all being too wrapped up in rulemaking of additional areas that are at least germane, if not directly captured under Title III, that might be worth additional review, if that'd be helpful at all, Kevin.
Yep.
Great. Another question that, again, I apologize, this came up and is a little bit indirect, but came up since our last conversation, but around the fee determination type in particular, as it may or may not relate to audits. So I had an outfitter ask me, like, let's just say that on the river that I run, and it doesn't have to be a river, but wherever I'm operating, that the lion's share majority of outfitters end up electing for the predetermined flat fee, so the $7 per visitor use day in lieu of a 3% of adjusted gross. Their question was, because they had just been through a fairly onerous audit, and along with other outfitters in that unit, their question was, would that hypothetical at all change the need for the BLM to conduct an audit for outfitters, both for their concerns about the cost and the time that it takes on their end? And first, does that question make sense?
Would you explain what action on the permittee's part would change the audit?
So the
Or
thought was this outfitter's thought, I think, was that to the degree that the purpose of the BLM auditing outfitter use and fee collections, and generally, at least in certain states, the way that the BLM has done this is they'll say we're going to take a random sample, right, of the permittees conducting a certain activity in the state or in a certain subunit to just get a sense as a litmus test, like, are we collecting or is this outfitter correctly reporting use? Have we collected fees that reflect the use that they're reporting and that also track along with their financial statements to the degree that they're providing them? So their thought was that to the degree that a significant proportion of outfitters, again, in that area or with that activity, were to switch over to a flat fee, that
flat
really
fee
the only
choice? Gotcha.
right.
Gotcha.
So that would
Josh,
that at all change the need to perform those audits, or is that otherwise required for separate reasons that the BLM can't get around?
yeah, I'll take a stab at that. And Josh, I'm not sure what our official take is, but I think the randomness of the sample is probably paramount. We want our audits to be, randomly generated and not selected, so to speak. And I would imagine there might be a split in terms of daily fees that are audited versus, and that split may be based on frequency of choice or magnitude of financial, cash flow into the agency. I'm not sure what determinations we might use to make that sample split. But Josh, do you have any more refined thinking on that?
Yeah, so as you shared, Kevin, our auditing practices are through random selection. So choosing a fixed fee does not eliminate you from requiring an audit. We may require an audit, but if someone consistently is selecting a fixed fee versus annual gross receipts fee, it's going to simplify the audit greatly because the auditor is going to be looking at participant use and not
Right,
and not on an adjusted gross receipts
right.
methodology for calculating fees.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. I'm just looking through some of the questions that we had come in beforehand to see what hasn't been covered. There are several questions around allocation caps and requesting additional use. And again, I think we covered these, I believe, in general terms, but just for the sake of being thorough, one of the questions that came in that we identified previously was: are there caps on the total outfitter and guide use that may be allocated in a given area? And if so, and I'm assuming that they mean maybe beyond, management plan limitations, et cetera. And if so, are those set by resource management plans or by Title III?
Yeah, Title III does not establish allocations. That's done at local plans, whether that be a resource management plan or a local management plan that's been developed that establishes those allocations.
And that would be a recreation area management plan. That's the type
Yeah,
of local plan we have.
yeah.
Yep. And if there is no limit in a given case on, say, the face of the permit, so the original allocation on somebody's permit, and it's otherwise an unlimited, so to speak, so isn't limited by capacity activity that they're providing services for in a given area. Do you have some sense, in particular in the interim, what the process might be for an outfitter to uh, both know that there is, say, surrendered use by other outfitters, or to be able to pick that up?
Yeah, so as Raptor develops, we have some improvements lined up to help with this. But currently, the if a recreation service provider is interested in knowing about um, allocated use that's been surrendered and available for reassignment, that they need to notify their permitted administrator and let them know that they want to be notified when allocated use is open for reassignment. And the
And yeah,
expectation is permitted administrators will share that with the pool of people that show interest. But Raptor, the vision for Raptor in a later development is that a recreation service provider can opt into an email distribution list and for a specific office. And as soon as visitor use days become available for reassignment, BLM will trigger Raptor to notify all those who opted in to be notified when reassignment becomes available.
so in the interim, it'll just be an informal, hey, please notify me when and if there is surrendered use that I might be eligible for picking up. And
Yep,
once Raptor is fully built out with the capability that you had on one of your earlier slides, it'll be automated for them to be on that listserv.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Aaron, can I just note quick that we're getting close to the end?
I think
Okay.
David's got a question.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
David.
yeah. Just quickly, you know?
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you muted yourself on accident, David.
Sorry. In that circumstance where you have people applying for unused capacity, how are you going to decide who gets it? Is it going to be first come, first serve, or are you going to just draw randomly from existing applicants after a certain
Good
time
question.
frame?
I, I, we don't have a standardized process for that. We've left that for the local office to make a determination of how they're going to reassign those days when there's more than a single interest in utilizing those days. And so that would be a conversation that a service provider needs to have with their permit administrator, who can inform them at the local level how that's going to be shared amongst the various interest or the varied interest.
And I'm guessing that's at the very least for the interim, but that rulemaking would likely address a process for the administration of the surrendered and available visitor use days through the pool system
Yeah.
in rule. Is that correct?
Possibly,
Or
I would say possibly so, but more importantly, we're gonna, ensure that the field offices have a plan to distribute those additional visitor use days before they, make them available, so that it's not, developed on the fly, so to speak. Are they going to go first come,
Mhm.
first serve, or do they want to do a lottery? And so, Josh, I'm not sure, how we want to communicate that, but we'll get that woven into guidance. And I'm not sure. I just can't let you know if that's going to be a regulation or a handbook.
that is more than fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are getting close on time. So I think barring any sort of last questions here, we can begin our segue to the outro, which is really just that I really appreciate your time here and you answering these questions, and really appreciate folks who have joined here. We will be putting together sort of a summary of this as well as posting this for anybody to be able to access in the Explore playlist we've put together on America Outdoors YouTube page. And any sort of summary will obviously make sure to run by you, Kevin, and Josh in advance. Um, I suppose, Kevin, Josh, is there anything that you would like to leave folks with or any sort of final points of note before we start closing things out here?
Yeah, I'll let Josh go and then I'll close out.
Yeah, I just want to share again appreciation for all that you do. It's the work that you guys do, and the access that you provide for so many people. It's essential and so important, and really appreciate everything you do, and the patience that you're going to have as you work with your local offices and their transition to Title III. But with that, know that field offices are. I'm working with many field offices to ensure advanced and quick response to Title III implementation, so that they're ready to engage with you. So again, thanks for your time.
And I think my close would focus on the fact that, I think we shared our vision for our delivery of Title III. And, the good news is you all get to be the judge of how we're doing. And I think Aaron knows that we're not afraid of getting, some good critique or areas that you all think need to change in a different direction. So again, keep those comments coming. I do appreciate Josh's mention of patience, because everybody's playing version 1.0, and we're going to keep on improving it. And of course, our team members are learning 1.0 while they're supposed to be experts, but they're fairly new to the game, and they're all working their way through a new shared understanding of Title III together with you and with headquarters and things like that. So yeah, let us know how we're doing. That's how we get better. And we like both sets of feedback. But anyway, that's going to help us succeed and do what we're supposed to be doing for you. That's it. Thank you. Appreciate the
Well,
time.
sure. Yeah, sure appreciate it. And I know you usually just get the negative or critical feedback. So again, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all you do. Y'all, both agency wide, but in particular, you, Kevin, and Josh have been incredibly responsive when we've reached out, when we flagged things, when we've asked questions, including and not limited to doing things like this for folks in the industry. And it's really not lost on us. You have other things that you could be doing, that you probably need to be doing, that you definitely prefer to be doing. So really appreciate you taking the time to do this and helping us work our way through it. We will keep a lookout. If there's anything else you'd like to share after the fact, we can put that out in our next newsletter as well. If you think of anything afterward, Kevin or Josh, we'll certainly keep a lookout for the sort of public facing guidance that's set to come out, March, April. And again, would encourage folks, as you were early on, Josh, to please direct your field specific or permit specific questions to your local field office in the interim, unless it's something that rises to the level of sort of a categorical or nationwide level concern. And otherwise, please use the implementation tracker just to flag any gaps or any concerns that you're seeing in your particular operation on your district, with the link that Karen provided that we'll also put in the show notes or whatever the kids call it on the YouTube page. Thank you all again for joining us, for your thoughtfulness, for all the work. Final thank you to David Brown. I don't think Explorers would be a thing without David Brown. He hates it when I give him compliments, but it's really true. And I really appreciate you being here and sharing your insight as well.
Thank you all.
That's all I got.
That's
Thanks,
it.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.